Well, I would advise not paying too much attention to the clean water issue. If there's enough energy, you can always get enough clean water. Israel sometimes goes month after month making half its water from seawater. With enough energy, why you have the water problem goes away.
Given your interest in renewable energy and natural resources, I wonder if you'd be willing to share your thoughts on how a world of limited and depleting clean water supplies and declining food stocks affects your investment strategies and thinking on the future.
Yeah, I would say it's an important subject, but it doesn't affect our investment strategy to any real degree. In other words, we would love to buy another Geico. We would love to buy another BNSF. We'd love to buy another Mid-American. And we look at those businesses over a long time frame, but we are looking at what we expect their earning power to be 3, 5, 10, 15 years down the road compared to what we are paying. So I would say that there are a number of societal issues that really do not enter into our investment or purchase of business type decisions. Charlie?
I think one of the main reasons for being restrained in the use of hydrocarbons is that modern agriculture won't work without them. So I'm a great believer in being conservative in terms of blowing all the hydrocarbons on heating houses and running cars. Think of how happy we'd be if we'd taken a bunch of that dollar oil in the Middle East and just carted it here and put it in salt caverns. I mean, you can argue we really screwed up the past, and you could argue all the people who think that our main solution is to drill, drill, drill. They're all nuts. It's probably quite wise to use up the other fellow's hydrocarbons while preserving our own.
Certainly.
It's not going away because we're not drilling it now. But you can see that this will lead into unproductive discussion.
This is not, what we do is not a complicated business. It's got to be a disciplined business, but it does not require a super high IQ or anything of the sort. There are a few fundamentals that are incredibly important, and you do have to understand accounting, and it helps to get out and talk to consumers and start thinking like a consumer in many ways in certain industries, all of that. But it just doesn't require advanced learning. And I certainly, I didn't want to go to college, so I don't know whether I would have done better or worse if I'd just quit after high school. And read the books I read and all of that. I think that if you run into a few great teachers and they really change the way you see the world to some degree, you're lucky, and you can find them in academia, and you can find them in ordinary life. And I've been extraordinarily lucky in having great teachers, including Charlie. I mean, Charlie's been a wonderful teacher. And, any place you can find somebody that gives you insights into things you didn't understand before, maybe makes you a better person than you would have been before, that's very lucky, and you want to make the most of it. If you can find it in academia, make the most of it. And if you can find it in the rest of your life, make the most of it. Charlie?
Well, when you found Ben Graham, he was unconventional, and he was very smart. And of course, that was very attractive to you. And then when you found out it worked and you could make a lot of money while you're sitting on your ass, of course, you were an instant convert. And so...
It still appeals to me, actually. I mean...
But the world changed. Before he died, Ben Graham recognized that the exact way he sought undervalued companies wouldn't necessarily work for all times under all conditions. And that's certainly the way it worked for us. We gradually morphed into trying to buy the better companies when they were underpriced instead of the lousy companies when they were underpriced. And of course that worked pretty well for us. And Ben Graham, he outlived the game that he played personally most of the time. He lived to see most of it fade away. I mean, just to find some company that's selling for 1/3 of its working capital and figure out it could easily be liquidated and distribute $3 for every dollar of market price. Lots of luck if you can find those in the present markets. And if you can find them, they're so small that Berkshire wouldn't find them of any use anyway. So we've had to learn a different game, and that's a lesson for all the young people in the room. If you're going to live a long time, you have to keep learning.
Yeah.
What you formerly knew is never enough. So if you don't learn to constantly revise your earlier conclusions and get better ones, why, I always use the same metaphor. You're like a one-legged man in an ass-kicking contest.
Yeah. If anybody has suggestions for another metaphor, send them to me. Graham, incidentally, one point, important point, Graham was not scalable. I mean, you could not do with really big money. And when I worked for Graham Newman Corp., here he was, the dean of all analysts, and, he was an intellect above all others around that time. But the investment fund was $6 million, and the partnership that worked in tandem with the investment company also had about $6 million in it. So we had $12 million we were working with. Now you can make adjustments for inflation, but and everything. But it was just a tiny amount. It wasn't really scalable. And the truth is, Graham didn't care because he really wasn't interested in making a lot of money for himself. So it had no reason to want to find something that could go on and become larger and larger. So the utility of Chapter 8 in terms of looking at stocks as a business is of enormous value. The utility of Chapter 20 about a margin of safety is of enormous value. But that's not complicated stuff. Yeah.
I finally figured out why the teachers of corporate finance often teach a lot of stuff that's wrong. When I had some eye troubles very early in life, I consulted a very famous eye doctor, and I realized that his place of business was doing a totally obsolete cataract operation. They were still cutting with a knife after better procedures had been invented. And I said, why are you in a great medical school performing absolute obsolete operations? And he said, Charlie, it's such a wonderful operation to teach. Well, that's what happens in corporate finance. They get these formulas, and it's a fine teaching experience. You give them the formula, you present the problem, they use the formula. You get a real feeling of worthwhile activity. There's only one trouble, it's all balderdash.
Yeah, whenever you hear a theory described as elegant, watch out.
Right.
You heard that remark, we were referring to Charlie earlier about all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. Well, we think about that in terms of, we believe in reverse engineering, and how do we keep people from buying it who really are going to be unhappy, a few years later. It's a little like singing country songs. You should sing them backwards. That way you get your home back and your auto back and your wife back. I mean,
I'm Joe Condon from London. Both Mr. Buffett and Mr. Munger have addressed my question in annual reports and at previous meetings here. This is my first time. It has to do with investment in a few great high technology stocks. I know your answer has been that if you don't understand it, and I can't, after this performance, can't really believe that both of you don't understand most of the the high technology questions. But I'm thinking about not only Microsoft, but say Pfizer and J&J, all three companies which have already proven that not only do they have a great product, proven management over 10 to 15 years, great market share positions, which are not easy to get into. And I frankly don't see a big difference in the PE ratios, for example, if you say Coca-Cola, or against Johnson & Johnson or Pfizer, which are very powerful companies. I wonder if either or both of you would address that question again.
Charlie, why don't you?
If you have something you think you understand that looks very attractive to you, we think it's smart to do what you understand. If we'd been unable to find companies, we well might have been in the to it. We don't sneer at it. Other people with more talent have found that a wonderful course of action.
We generally look at businesses. We feel change is likely to work against us. We do not have great ability. We do not think we have great ability to predict where change is going to lead. We think we have some ability to find businesses where we don't think change is going to be very important. Now, at a Gillette, the product is going to be better 10 years from now than now, or 20 years from now than 10 years from now. You saw those earlier ads going back to the Blue Blade and all that. The Blue Blade seemed great at the time, but the shaving technology gets better and better. But you know that Gillette, although they had that little experience with Wilkinson in the early 60s, but you know that Gillette is basically going to be spending many multiples the money on developing better shaving systems than exist now compared to anyone else. You know, they got the distribution system, they got the believability. If they bring out a product and they say this, they got the distribution system, they got the believability. If they bring out a product and they say this is something that, when they said to women to look at it in the shaving field, they wouldn't have that same credibility someplace else, but in the shaving field they have it. Those are assets that can't be built, and they're very hard to destroy. So change, we think we know in a general way what the soft drink industry or the shaving industry or the candy business is going to look like 10 or 20 years from now. We think Microsoft is a sensational company run by the best of managers, but we don't have any idea what that world is going to look like in 10 or 20 years. Now, if you're going to bet on somebody that is going to see out and do what we can't do ourselves, I'd rather bet on Bill Gates than anybody else. But I don't want to bet on anybody else. I mean, in the end, we want to understand ourselves where we think a business is going. And if somebody tells us the business is going to change a lot, in Wall Street they love to tell you that that's great opportunity. They don't think it's a great opportunity when Wall Street itself is going to change a lot, incidentally. But it's a great opportunity. We don't think it's an opportunity at all. I mean, it scares the hell out of us because we don't know how things are going to change. We are looking, when people are chewing gum, we have a pretty good idea how they chewed it 20 years ago and how they'll chew it 20 years from now. And we don't really see a lot of technology going into the art of the chew, But, so that, as long as we don't have to make those other decisions, why in the world should we? I mean, all kinds of things we don't know. And so why go around trying to bet on things we don't know when we can bet on the simple things?